Hi, and welcome to the So Many Things YouTube channel. I'm Tim, your host. Here you get to sew with the boys, quilt with the boys, embroider with the boys, and of course, mostly have some fun, and you might learn something along the way. Stay tuned!
Hi everybody, I'm Stuart from So Many Things in Mount Dora, Florida. And this month for Strip Club, we've chosen to use the Equinox pattern by Cozy Quilt Design. Notice on the pattern that she chose fall colors like we chose a Halloween print. The strip pack is from Wilmington Prints. There are 40 strips in this pack. And we removed some of the light ones and replaced them with some other fabrics, which I will show you in just a second. The background and the first border of the quilt that I made is from Parkside Fabrics, Princess Mira Batiks. It's from their summer collection of 2018. The two fabrics that we added to make the number of strips that we needed by eliminating the lighter fabrics are from Henry Glass, their Modern Melody Basics, and the Haunted Night collection from Wilmington Prints. Second border to bring the whole quilt together is from Studio E, their Harvest Moon collection. I also wanted to mention that the Wilmington Prints Haunted Night collection comes in a collection of 10-inch squares. There are 42 pieces in this pack. Layer cake. Oh, no, not layer cake, but whatever it is, they're 10-inch squares. As I mentioned, all of the squares in the main part of the quilt are 1. This is the square that Cozy Quilt designed. Notice that in the center block you have alternating colors. I did something a little different with some of the blocks that I put in, and here's some of the blocks that I made a little differently. Notice that they're center blocks, they're not alternating colors. The colors are grouped. So there's a little different look between this block and this block. And then in the overall design of the quilt, the blocks were alternating. Here, here, here. So now let's show you how to make these blocks. Remember, there is only one block in this quilt, and it's a star block. Here is the star block you're going to be creating, and depending on the size of the quilt is the number of blocks you're going to create. It's composed of 2 sections, the center star and the edges. So we're going to start with the center star. The fabrics that you need for the center star block are 2 2.5 by 4.5 inch strips and 2 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares from one strip, 2 2.5 by 4.5 inch strips and 2 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares of another strip. And then from your background fabric you need 2 2.5 by 4.5 inch strips and 8 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares. So your background fabric is surrounding your block. And then you're going to take 4 of those 2.5 by 2.5 inch square background pieces, and you're going to draw a line diagonal on the back of them. And look, I have diagonal lines on 4 of the squares. So that is the beginning of the creation of the block. And now we're going to cut for a commercial break. Start your star block. You start with these right here. So this is one of the pieces that you're going to be making, and you're going to make 4 of them. You're going to make 2 from one color and 2 from another color. It's important that you note that your 2 from each color have to have the diagonal lines running in the correct direction. I will talk more about that in a minute. To create this piece, you take your 2.5 by 4.5 inch strip right side up. You place your 2.5 by 2.5 inch square wrong side to you on top of it. So now right sides are together, and you're going to sew along your diagonal line. Make sure you place this nice and square on top of the other one, or it's not going to come out correctly. Cozy Quilts recommends that you sew on one side of the line, and she further elaborates this in your directions. After you've sewn your line, you're going to take your ruler, voila. You're going to place your 1/4 inch line right on the sewn line, and you're going to cut this part of your block off. After doing that, you turn your rest of your square up, and look, you have your finished piece. Remember what I was saying about how important it is to keep your angles separate. So your block that you created here is this one here and here, but the orange blocks have a different angle. So how you create that other angle is by placing your diagonal line in a different direction. She has very good instructions as to how you do this, but make sure you follow them, or you will wind up with 4 blocks that look like that, which will not create this. Okay, for the next part of the block, you're actually making flying geese. You're going to use a 2.5 by 4.5 inch background, and then you're going to use 1 each of your 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares. And now we're going to mark the backs of the 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares with the diagonal line, like that. This is a 2-step process because you have to sew and cut one side and then sew and cut the other side. So you take one of your 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares, and place it on your piece of background. Make sure you place it carefully. And you're going to sew along your diagonal line. And then after you've sewn your diagonal line, you're going to take out your 1/4 inch. And you're going to cut away your remaining piece. Fold that piece over and press it, and then you're going to add your second 2.5 by 2.5 inch square, right sides together. Again, very carefully matching your corners. You're going to sew along your diagonal line. And then after you're sewn it, you're going to have to take your 1/4 inch ruler and you're going to cut away your excess. After you've trimmed it, now you fold your square over and you've created your flying geese. Like that. And you make 2 of these for each block. I did want to point out that your fabrics will all be different. If you get our strip pack, there's maybe 20 different fabrics in there to create your blocks with. And if you use your fabrics with your diagonal lines on them, you need to take note of which way your lines are running, or not, depending how meticulous you are. Notice in the block that I made, all of my diagonal lines run the same direction. They don't have to. But when you're creating your flying geese is when you're trying to match what you've already made, or as I said, or not match. Okay, on to the next part. So we've made the flying geese, and now we're going to make the rest of the top and the bottom of your block. And that's very, very simple because you're only going to add 2.5 inch by 2.5 inch squares to either side. So here's your flying geese, and here's your 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares on either side. And then, magically, when you sew them together, that's what you get. So you need 2 of these sets for each center block. Now on to the edges. Here, 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 and here. Notice you have 2 edges, the top and the bottom, and then you have 2 edges that are the side, and this is one pair and this is another pair. To construct the edges, you will need 4 2.5 by 6.5 inch from one piece of fabric, 2 2.5 by 4.5 inch pieces of your background fabric, and 4 2.5 by 4.5 inch pieces from another fabric. You start with a 2.5 by 4.5 inch piece of background and a 2.5 by 4.5 inch piece of print fabrics. You're going to lay your print fabric right sides together over your background fabric to form this sort of L. Be very careful in how you place this. Then you're going to draw a diagonal line from the top corner of your print fabric to the bottom corner of your background fabric. And then after you've done that, you're going to sew along your diagonal line. So after you've sewn your diagonal line, you take your 1/4 inch ruler, place it over your sewn line, cut away your excess. And you fold your piece back and you have the start of your edge. And now you're going to repeat the same process with a strip on the other side. You put your other piece of print fabric on your other side, draw a diagonal line from your corner to the bottom corner of your background fabric, sew along the line, and then with your 1/4 inch ruler you cut away your excess and you fold it back, and through the magic of video you have a completed edge. You're going to make 2 of these this size, and then you're going to make 2 of these in the longer one for each block. You've created 4 edges, 2 short edges and 2 long edges. And now you sew the short edges onto your block, keeping in mind that you are creating a square. So pay close attention to your placement of your points. And then you sew your long edges on. The same thing applies. You're creating a square. So pay attention to your points. Now you've completed one of the blocks for the quilt. Remember, you're going to be making any number of them depending on what size of the quilt that you're making. And notice that as she shows you, your orange and your black are alternate. But I want to show you a variation on that. If you don't alternate your orange and your black, then you wind up with a block of color in the 4 corners. So you can do it either way and it will still look just as nice. And now once again, here is the finished quilt. Thank you all for watching this video from So Many Things. Be sure to tune in next month for another exciting video on a new cozy quilt pattern.